Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Mike Bennett,
And I'm Dylan Wilson.
and we're here to talk a little bit about the relationship between the drums.
And the bass, what's called the rhythm section.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of discuss some of the different topics that we find ourselves talking about a lot, whether it's backstage or on the tour bus or hanging out at a bar.
Right, exactly. We're mainly here to share our insights. We've been playing together for 17 years, Mike?
Yeah, we're trying to do the math, and it looks like about 17 years
right.
now.
So a lot of gigs under our belt together in various situations, from rock tours to playing small jazz clubs and things like that. So hopefully we could share some things that will be useful to some of you people out there. Some of you probably heard before. Some might be repeat stories or...
Yeah. Overall, I think the goal is to kind of share some of our universal techniques that we developed over time, and
Exactly.
so hopefully allow you to be able to work with your rhythm section a little bit better, work with different musicians as you're going into hired gun situations maybe, and have some tools and some concepts together to allow you to make the best music possible, be a great listener, and hopefully be able to play with as many people as you possibly can.
Exactly. Some of the things we're going to cover include pulse, what that means to each of us, locking in together, improvising together in jammy type sections. What else, Mike?
Improvising them, the soloing, and also just our views towards listening and reacting.
Right, that's a big one.
And being the best decision makers that you can be behind your instrument and also collectively as a rhythm section. So we're really excited you're here, and let's get started.
All right, so let's get started with feel and pulse, and what do you think about pulse and how you feel time as a drummer?
I think pulse is kind of the overall most important concept to have, because pulse is definitely something that's consistent and happening, but it's really the most important concept to dial into in how we feel pulse individually and collectively as an ensemble or a rhythm section.
Yeah.
And pulse is generally defined by quarter notes. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So everything that is being played is a reaction to the pulse. It's an outline for not only the band, but also for the listener to understand what's going on. So when we talk about like what something feels like or how something's grooving, it's to me how someone's reacting to pulse. So even if we're talking about like our favorite players or their decisions or their individual feel, to me a lot of the time I'm listening and going like, oh, I like how they react to pulse.
Right. Somebody might feel the pulse and be more on top of the pulse and be like, oh, they're kind of an aggressive player, and that's going to change how you play. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, totally. And like, a lot of times when we talk about that, you could say like, being on top of the beat or being behind the beat. And, we could talk about click tracks and all that too, of like actually defining that pulse. But it's good to be able to have an overall feeling of how things are moving forward. And that's what pulse really dictates. How things are moving forward, and then the player's individual voice is going to show how they react around the pulse. So that's not only their voice, but also the reaction to the pulse is, trying to find the way that's best suited to that song or that soloist or that section.
Yeah.
What about you? How do you feel about like pulse and time? What are you thinking about when you're, locking into here's the groove? What are the things you're listening for from maybe the drummer or the band, and how you're going to react with it?
Right. Yeah. I definitely think that there is a musician or musicians in a group that will kind of take control of that and be the guy that you look toward. A lot of times it is the drummer, and I'm certainly looking to see how they're feeling that pulse and how I can react to that to make that feel better in that situation. Right. Certain drummers kind of are a little bit more laid back in that. And you don't want to be pushing and pulling with each other. That's one thing I don't like when I'm in a situation and I feel like, this guy's feeling this pulse way different than I am. And then it becomes this tug of war. And so avoiding that and being aware, I think that's the way to avoid it, basically, is be aware what that pulse is in that moment, in that song, right?
Yeah, and I think something we're going to be touching on a lot is just this agreement that has to be made between the rhythm section and the entire band of just how we're going to try to see this, how we're viewing the time, and how we're going to view the overall feel. Because really what the understanding of pulse does, it allows us to move inside the gap. So it's like being able to play in and around it. for me personally, like certain guys feel like, oh, I like to be behind the beat or I like to be ahead of the beat. For me personally, I tend to be pretty on the beat if I'm listening to the click, because then I can let the bass player sit behind the beat a little bit. Like, we don't have to be completely locked up all the time.
That could also change in the song, I think, too.
Yeah.
You get into a section where it's a halftime, maybe you pull it back just a little bit to exaggerate that and dramatize that moment.
Yeah.
Within a song. But
yeah, I think the biggest thing with it is just understanding how to play in and around it and be able to maneuver as time continually moves forward.
Right, and not be locked into I'm doing this right here. I'm staying at 60 BPMs or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's just and that's what makes something groove. It's just the reaction to time. Now, when you're feeling that too, like even like on a slower tempo, let's say something 1, 2, 3, 4. How do you handle the subdivisions? And actually, what are subdivisions, and then how do you handle them?
Right. Yeah. So subdividing would be in your example, you're giving like a quarter note. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm taking it anyway. So then in your mind, you double that up, 1 and 2 or just da 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 da. And the slower the tempo in general, you want to subdivide more, I think, so that I think when you're subdividing more in a slower tempo, you're able to relax a little bit more and place your notes more accurately, versus at a faster tempo, you want to go opposite. And if it's an up tempo, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you want to feel right there. I'm just clapping on 2 and 4 or snapping, just so that I could feel that. At a halftime, and that helps me to relax, so I'm not too on top, too on top of it, and making it feel frantic or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of have a rule of thumb when I'm setting up my clicks or I'm just feeling time, is I try to find the most comfortable subdivision. Because there comes to a point when it gets faster, those eighth notes, when it goes to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's frantic, and then if I'm subdividing like that, I'm hearing that and I'm thinking that it naturally makes me be on top or have more anxiety towards the groove.
Comfortable is a good word to say.
So
where does it feel comfortable to subdivide?
Yeah, I try to find the best comfortable subdivision, because what those subdivisions do for me is it actually eliminates a margin of error. If I'm trying to feel time in between big spaces, and I can continually just keep sealing the gaps a little bit more, it's going to allow me to play in better time and hopefully feel the groove a little bit more. It provides a little greater consistency, and the biggest thing just kind of limits those areas of mistake or error. Mm-hmm. So time and pulse is something that's very important to us, and we're definitely going to be talking too about how that relates to building the groove, because that's the first and foremost thing that we're trying to connect on.
Exactly.